Hello, beautiful people. Today is 18th of June. My name is Sahil, and welcome to Newspaper Analysis. Friends, today we are taking a quote from the excerpt of an article written by the Sayyid Akbaruddin, who was India's representative to the United Nations. He says that change is often touted as being the only constant. However, in the hard nosed world of multilateral diplomacy, it is said that only babies with wet nappies delightfully accept change. Now, guys, this article becomes very much relevant as India is now seeking to hold the driver position into the multilateral institutions, for example, the United Nations Security Council, World Health Organizations, and various other platforms. Often, India and like minded countries talk about reforming the permanent five into the United Nations Security Council, but still now no change has came because of this particular reason. Only baby with wet nappies will delightfully accept the change. And P5, they are into a very much privileged position. So, guys, a status quo needs to be broken, and that thing can be broken by a very carefully crafted diplomacy. So, friends, into the question of international relation, GS paper number 2, as well as essays related to the world order, this quote will be very much relevant. Now, guys, coming to the main question that I have gave you yesterday. So the question is, freedom to form cooperative societies is the right step to ensure that a vibrant cooperative sector builds upon the past successes. Discuss the utility of cooperative sector for the migrant and farmers. Now, guys, first of all, into the last years, it has been seen that in UPSC 4 5 line questions are coming. This is very normal. Now, if you carefully read the question, actual question begins from here. You need to simply discuss the utility of cooperative sector, and you just need to give the past successful examples. This question is as simple. It might look tricky just to confuse you. The above two lines does not have any actual meaning. It is just giving you the context where you need to write. Now, coming to the main answer. So, guys, large number of migrants have come back to their villages and now they don't have avenues to work. So, in this capacity, if they form a cooperative society, then a large pool of like skilled worker will be formed, and they can work as an association and can take the bulk orders, can make give a representative voice, and will be have a large collective bargaining power. They can take the industrial orders, they can export the commodities, and therefore they can also improve the regional inequalities into the village where such kind of cooperative societies will be formed. Now, guys, talking about the historical successes, we have the example of Amul, because it also started as a cooperative of the farmers who will pool up their milk, and then the milk will be processed in order to meet the supply into the urban regions. Moreover, guys, there are other examples also. For example, you can take the example of the Lijjat Papad, which happens to be a self-help groups where the women are working to make the snacks. So these are the historical examples as how certain movements started as a cooperatives or self-help groups and culminated into the multi-million dollar enterprises. So into the same direction, right now the farmers can come together into the areas such as food processing, can collectivize their farms, can go into the production of organic food grains, horticulture, and all these kind of things. And similarly, the migrants can also collectivize, can form the cooperatives into the skill set whichever they are having. So, guys, on that particular line, you need to write. However, into the conclusion, you will write the role of the government as how the policies, swift flow of the credit, as well as the support from the administration will be needed to be given. So, that's all. And now let's go to the newspaper analysis. Friends, today we will only be taking the editorial analysis because from past 3 days I got a very bad eye infection, and due to that I am having continuous severe headache and fever, and I am not able to access to any medical facilities also, because you know how the conditions are going on. And today it is worst. I'm not able to concentrate onto the screen too much. So today only the editorial analysis will be taking, and I promise that from tomorrow we will restore the entire newspaper analysis that we used to take. Moreover, I have gone through the entire newspaper also, and there are hardly any important news throughout the paper. There is only the China, India, China, COVID, and political issues. Guys, I hope that you'll understand and will cooperate. Now, let's take up the first article. So, here I have clubbed two articles because they are the continuation of each other. And this big one article is excellent article as how historically India have responded and what lessons India can learn. Now, yesterday we had seen that the 20 Indian soldiers have been martyred into the Galwan Valley. And guys, this thing is very much disturbing because since 1962, there have been no fatality into the Galwan, and Galwan as a whole has been a very peaceful territory. Now, guys, along with Galwan, the other confrontation is also going on to the Pangong Tso Lake Fingers region. Here we can see the location. Here you can see the Pangong So, and on to the north, this is the hill range, the Chang Chenmu range, which is also called as Fingers. Now, before this confrontation, India claimed the region up to finger number 8, but actually held the ground up to finger number 4. And they used to conduct the patrolling from finger 4 to finger 8 also. Now, guys, into the present crisis, what has come? The Chinese have entered up to the finger number 4 and had avoided India to patrol into this entire region, and now they say that India only have control up to finger number 2. Now repeatedly government is saying that the de-escalation is occurring and the Chinese have not entered, but now it is very much clear that they had entered. So the editorial says that it is high time that India should make the official statements that what is the actual position that is going along the line of actual control, because it is very much necessary to win the confidence of the people, and that only possibility is by giving them the right information. Although Prime Minister has said that a befitting reply will be given and the sacrifice will not go in vain, but guys, only true hope will come when there will be the complete withdrawal of the troops from both the sides. Now, friends, there are certain lessons which we can learn from the history. See, the relations between India and China technically started after the Panchsheel agreement that was signed by the Jawaharlal Nehru, and the Panchsheel defined the five areas of cooperation. But from the very start, though the treaty was signed, but India was skeptical of China because the treaty which was given by the Mao Zedong, that is five fingers of Tibetan palm. So in China, it is believed that Tibet is the palm of the hand, and Ladakh, Nepal, Sikkim, Bhutan, and the northeast are the fingers, and these fingers are to be reunited with the palm. And because of this policy, from the very start, China began to ask the claim into the Jammu and Kashmir sector also from the India. Now, guys, this particular position was going on, and in 1959, Dalai Lama flew from the Tibet and took refuge in India. And the Chinese position on India, because of this particular thing, became even more critical. And ultimately, the war in 1962 took place, though there were other reasons also. Now, guys, though war was not a good thing, but certain good policy actions were being taken during this particular region. So one by one, we'll see them. Now, first of all, in mid 1950s, a specific service, that is Indian Frontier Administrative Service, was made to look onto the boundary regions of Andhra Pradesh as well as other border areas. And officers for this service came from the Indian Foreign Services, Indian Police Service, and Indian Administrative Service. Now, guys, they used to overlook as what developmental activities were going on so that the area doesn't seize a neglect. Moreover, there was also a special desk into the Ministry of External Affairs, and the work of this special desk is to tour the entire boundary region of India and China to give the suggestion as what more developmental activities should be taken care of. Now, guys, what happened in 1968? All these were wound up, and the work was given to the Indian Army. But since it has been seen that there are large number of regions along the India China boundary which had seen a neglect, and in 2019 there was a suggestion from the Mizoram as well as Arunachal Pradesh that again the IFAS should be resurrected because they will be able to give more attention to the boundary. So guys, we should revisit it. After that, the next suggestion is the outreach program and treaties that were taken by India after the independence. Now, guys, in 1950s, see what India did, a multi-pronged strategy. It signed the free treaty of friendship with the Nepal. it signed the Treaty of Friendship with the Bhutan. Then the Ladakh was reorganized, consolidated into the Jammu and Kashmir. Sikkim was reorganized, and NEFA was also consolidated into the northeast. Different states were made. So what India was doing? India was keeping the control over the fingers so that China doesn't flexes the muscle. And the treaties even created a win-win situation for the countries such as Nepal as well as Bhutan, because a large concessions were given. And now coming to the present context, friends, we had seen that the relation with Bhutan has been very good. And even in 2017, when Doklam issue came, at that point of time, Bhutan readily approached the India and did not sided with the China. But into the context of Nepal, China is making inroads into the Nepal, and it is very clear that only onto the pretext of China, Nepal is now directly challenging to the India. So what is the difference here? Both the countries we have treaty, but guys, the difference come before, because with Bhutan, though original treaty was signed in 1949, but there were irritants in between, and those irritants were removed in 2007 when the treaty was renegotiated. But with Nepal, we originally signed a treaty in 1950, and we had made no attempt to renegotiate the treaty or to remove the irritants, and because of these irritants, now the dispute with Nepal are also coming. Even an eminent person group was constituted, which also says that the treaty should be revisited, renegotiated, but attention has not been given. So, guys, another suggestion is that we need to again enhance our outreach program, and treaties are needed to be renegotiated as earlier it was done. Now, guys, fourthly, we need to take certain proactive steps onto the palm, that is onto the Tibet. In 1959, when the Dalai Lama came to India, India gave refuge to Dalai Lama, and because of this, Tibetans had seen India into the confidence. But now a question comes that who will be the successor of the Dalai Lama? Though there have been estimates that the Karmapa Lama will be the successor, but guys, he mostly lives into the USA and is largely absent from the scene. By the way, guys, Dalai Lama is a religious head of the Tibetan Buddhist. Right now, Dalai Lama is Tenzin Gyatso, but after Tenzin Gyatso, who will be Dalai Lama? So, in this particular capacity, now China will install his own person onto the position of the Dalai Lama, and he could mold the Tibetans into the favor of the China. Therefore, India also needs a strategy that how the confidence of Tibetans should be kept diverted towards the India. And finally, India also needs to be very much careful onto the J&K metrics. Last year in 2019, the status of J&K was changed after the reorganization. Now, guys, though it was very much expected that Pakistan will not react into the positive light, but the reaction of China was not given attention, and even the Home Minister gave the statements into the parliament that the Aksai Chin will be taken, and we forgot that China has much claims into the J&K into the form of China Pakistan Economic Corridor, Belt and Road Initiative, and others thing also. And guys, as earlier the attention was given onto the Ladakh sector by consolidating, again such a response is given because we can't lose a finger, that is Ladakh. So in this particular way, we can learn from the history. And guys, it happens to be an excellent answer if a question on the way forward comes. So friends, that's all about this particular article, and now we'll move to next. Now guys, this particular editorial talks as how effective care can be provided if we include the medical care. Earlier we had seen editorials in favor of including private sector as well as against the private sector. I hope you have done it and have noted it down. Now guys, on to the same direction, we will take this again a new article. Now we know that the private sector is the major player in the health in India, but right now private sector is operating at the skeletal level. Now guys, the government's focus is that anybody who had the traits of the COVID-19 should be given institutional quarantine and should be treated into the hospitals. But right now, seeing the number of cases, this thing could not be given into the public hospitals. Moreover, guys, the government is apprehensive in including into the private sector, and very less say hospitals have been enrobed. there it defies the logic. Why? Because the treatment of COVID-19 is not that much complicated, and only the 15% people even above the 80 plus age have been died, so mortality rate happens to be low. And the treatment involves the basic monitoring and caretaking. For example, the level of oxygen into the blood is needed to be taken care of. Into the acute cases, ventilator care is to be given, and such thing can be provided if the private sector is robbed. So government should not shy away. And not only involving the private sector will do the work, rather the treatment cost also needs to be capped, because due to the high cost the stigma has been attached to the people and they are simply not coming for the treatment, rather they prefer to die at the home. So cost needs to be rationalized here. Moreover, the hospital staffs into the private sector as well as public sector needs to be given adequate protective personal equipment, so that the medical front workers don't sacrifice their lives. Moreover, friends, there needs to be a very strong and clear message that every citizen who is having the COVID 19 symptoms will be given the best quality healthcare. And in that promise, we are indispensable to include the private sector. Guys, when the private sector is being robbed, certain precautions are needed to be taken care of. First of all, they should be given the adequate incentives as well as subsidies when they will give the treatment. Secondly, in order to not to breach the capacity of healthcare, only the patients with symptoms of COVID-19 should be admitted, and asymptomatic patients should be given an advice for the home treatment. After that, guys, confidentiality of all the patients should be preserved in order to give them their exercise of right of privacy. Then all the city hospitals should pool their resources together and should work as a single unit and not as a separate hospitals. And fifthly, staff safety is also needed to be taken care of, and they should be provided adequate training, PPE suits, and all the preventive care. Moreover, the families of the staff who contact COVID 19 and may die should also be given the adequate compensation. So, guys, right now the time is not to shy away from the private sector, rather to include the private sector onto these particular advisories. So, that's all. And now we'll move to next. Now, friends, this editorial talks about the multilateralism and its future. Now, friends, multilateralism is a phenomena where large number of countries, usually more than three, come together on commonly accepted goals and work in pursuance so that the common objective goal is reached. Now, guys, they are also bound with certain treaties, agreements, protocols as what should be done and what should not be done. Now, when we are talking about multilateralism, in its modern form, multilateralism started after the World War One, when the League of Nations was proposed by the USA to install the everlasting peace. However, we know that the League of Nations ultimately fell and it led to the World War II. Now, guys, multilateralism loses its strength when the member countries withdraw, and the same thing happened with the League of Nations, which ultimately failed. Moreover, I told you that the multilateralism depends on to the cooperation, but rarely cooperation actually happens. Even into the best of the best times, cooperation is less, rather conflict is more. Now, guys, coming to the present phase of multilateralism. So, this particular thing started after the World War II, when again the need was felt, and institutions such as United Nations, WHO, all were formed. Now, guys, these multilateral institutions of the present age are little bit different than the old multilateral institutions such as League of Nations. Why? Because these new institutions has even survived when the parties have left. For example, UNESCO has survived after the USA has withdrawn. Then there is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization in Vienna, which has survived even when large number of countries have left. And now the WHO might also be surviving even when the USA has again left it. Now, therefore, a question comes that if multilateralism will not fall like earlier it happened, then will be the case that the multilateralism will become the proxy of the country such as China. Because, guys, China right now contributes nearly 10% of the budget of the United Nations and also heads various multilateral organization. But actually, if we see the ground condition, then no, the multilateral institutions will not become the proxy of China because of certain reasons. Number one, if we see the representation of Chinese staff into the multilateral organization, then it is very much less, and it is not proportionate to the Chinese interests. Secondly, already China had failed to head the institutions such as UNESCO as well as World Intellectual Property Organization, and had not performed very good here. Moreover, China's success is often called into multilateral arena because of its Belt and Road Initiative, but till now it is very immature to call Belt and Road Initiative as a multilateral forum. So guys, China though actually is making a lot of noise, but onto the substantial grounds, China is way beyond than making any considerable impact. So now, when we talk about the future of multilateralism, the situation is not binary that either it will survive or it will collapse. Rather, there are some other possibilities also. And these possibilities are that the existing multilateral organizations will survive and they will become divided onto the coalitions which will have specific issues as well as agenda. For example, the environment, cyberspace, outer space, and all the response to the pandemics and all these kind of things. And guys, into these coalition, India should take a leadership position and should represent a like-minded bloc. And therefore, into the philosophy of Vasudev Kutumbakam, a new kind of trend should be started by the India. So, guys, this is about all this entire article, and now we'll move to next. Now, friends, this particular editorial talks about the maternal health related issues during the time of COVID-19. Now, friends, over last 15 years, governments are very much vocal on the reducing number of the infant mortality rate as well as maternal mortality rate. And in this direction, various schemes have been started. For example, into the National Food Security Act that was announced in 2013, cash incentives are given to the pregnant and to the lactating mothers. Moreover, guys, under the Janani Suraksha Yojana as well as Pradhan Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana, various incentives are being given. But suddenly, as the COVID-19 came, government might have forgotten that there were in only last 12 weeks 9 lakh women which were expected to give birth, but no attention has been given to their relief. For example, suddenly lockdown was announced, and into that lockdown, no announcement was made that what will be done for the women who are into the labor pain or are might be entering into the labor in the coming days. Moreover, guys, right now, if we see the condition of the hospitals, then either the hospitals are not working or they have been designated to the COVID 19 facilities. And in this particular background, what about the women to give them the maternal care, and as a consequence large number of mothers are dying because of non receiving of care. Guys, there are certain issues. Number 1, government has said that in order to be admitted to the hospital, the pregnant women needs to be test COVID-19 negative, but we know that the test reports come in a day or a two. What about the women who are just into the labor and needs urgent care? Secondly, what about the hospitals who have turned away the women who were in urgent labor pain, and as a consequence either they have died or have given birth into the unhygienic and unsanitary conditions? Thirdly, even if the private hospitals are admitting the women, they tend to go into the practice of profiteering, and higher hospital charges are being extracted. And till now government has not came out with any advisory on this particular issue. And then fourthly, government might have forget that India's maternal mortality ratio had came to 122 per lakh from the earlier 167, and much investment efforts were needed to make it from here to here. And now if the care will not be taken, the hard won gains will be forgotten and the 15 years hard work will be lost. And finally, what about the state's promise or state's responsibility to give the welfare to the citizens? The welfare of a person has been only left on its own capacity, and state is nearly absent. So it brings a kind of a distrust of citizens onto the government. So, guys, these are the impending issues which require the urgent intervention on the part of the government. So, guys, that's all. And these 5 editorials are the most important one into today's Hindu newspaper. I hope you have understood. And now let's move to the question section. Now, please pause the video and try to answer the question. So, first question is with respect to the National Survey Organization. Read the statement and try to identify the correct code. Now, question number 2 is with respect to the ecology. You need to see the status and need to tell who are the extinct. So please see the options and try to identify the correct code. Now, guys, question number 3 is from art and culture. Please consider the statements with respect to the Hagriva Madhav temple. And now the fourth question is with respect to the United Nations Convention to combat the desertification. Please read the statements and identify the correct code. Now, guys, the main question for today is that the concept of the welfare state reflective into the DPSP is the derivation of ideals enshrined into the preamble. So please comment as how this particular statement could be justified. So that's all for today. I hope you have liked the discussion. Thank you so much.